Welcome to On the Way, a podcast about life. But not just any life, it's about life with Jesus. Why do people follow Jesus, and how do they get started? And what difference does following Jesus make in their lives? Before Christians had a name, they were known as people of the way, people who followed Jesus' teachings. People have been on the way for nearly 2,000 years now. During the podcast, we explore the ways that people become followers of Jesus and why, and what difference following Jesus makes in their lives. On the Way is produced by the Baptist Standard, a donor-supported provider of news, opinion, and resources for living like Jesus. I'm Eric Black, editor of the Baptist Standard. I'm glad you're with us today. We have with us today Drayton McLane. He, after graduating from college, went into his family business and took that from Cameron to, you might say that it's gone worldwide. At a certain point, McLane merged with Walmart, and many of you may know him as an owner of the Houston Astros. So, Drayton McLane, we are so glad that you are with us today.
Well, thank you, Eric. It's an honor to be here and to be involved in the Christian program that you have and trying to bring people's lives to where it can be viewed and see how the important impact Christ has had on each of our lives.
Yes. Well, and that's a great segue into the focus of our podcast, which is two questions. How did you become a follower of Christ? And the follow-up question to that, what difference does following Christ make in your life? So let's start with the first question. How did you become a follower of Christ?
I'm one of the luckiest people in the world. I was born in 1936 in Cameron, Texas. Cameron is 35 miles east of Temple. It's a town of about 5,000. When I grew up and graduated from high school in 1954, and it's interesting, it's still a town of about 5,000, so not a lot has changed. So that ought to show you what it was like growing up in Cameron. But I had two older sisters, and my two sisters and I had the two finest Christian parents that anyone could have. My mother was a very devout Baptist. My father was a very devout Presbyterian. Okay. So we kind of mixed. We went to different summer programs and other youth programs in the Presbyterian church and the Baptist church. So I'm a little mixture of the philosophy of both of those denominations. But our parents taught my two sisters and I honesty and integrity and high Christian principles. And so that came into our life from the very beginning. And it was not only going to church Sunday morning, but it was going to training union Sunday afternoon.
Oh, yes. Yes.
And then church service on Sunday night. But your question was, how did I become a Christian? My parents influenced me and showed me the path of a profession of faith. Both my parents talked to me about it, and I had seen my sisters as they had made a profession of faith. And so it was just so easy. I became a Christian and made a profession of faith when I was 7 years old.
Oh, wow.
And in Cameron, Texas. And we had a terrific pastor during the period of time that I was in my youth there. And he made it so easy and so exciting. So I joined the First Baptist Church in Cameron, and my parents were just delighted and thrilled. And that has been an important part of my life, most important part of my life ever since. So it was easy of seeing the example my parents set and how they lived their lives, their love and their concern for each other, and then how they worked with my two older sisters. And it was just a path that was made so easy.
So that was when you were 7 years old.
7 years old. That was correct.
It's interesting to me that as I've interviewed people, quite a few came to a relationship with Christ or gave their life to Christ when they were very young. My wife was one of those. Our children did the same. And so from that point forward, you have a lot of life after that. And the second question, what influence or what, how has following Jesus made a difference in your life since then. As we look at what you've been involved in, one of the things that might be obvious to people is that you have been very generous with religious causes, such as churches, universities, other things that are connected to our Christian faith. But I'd rather you answer that question than what maybe so many people are aware of. How has making that decision when you were 7 influenced your life?
Well, it still dates back to just 2 strong Christian parents. You know, too often it's one parent or the other parent and some conflict, but I had both parents working together with us. Something that I still repeat today, and I'm 83 years old today. But my mother, this was way before they had big family rooms and TV rooms, that your parents' bedroom, your mother had a big rocking chair in there, and she would bring my 2 sisters and I there constantly and talk to us. And one of her themes I heard 5,000 times or more was, she said, who can really shape your life is who you select to be your friends. And she said, select Christian friends and they will lift you up throughout your life, and select them poorly and they will pull you down and could destroy your life. Well, as I was a youth growing up in Cameron, my mother had spies all over town. And I would make some bad selections at times, and she would call me into her bedroom and make me sit down beside her, and she would talk about poor choices she thought I was making, and it kind of went over the top of my head. When I graduated from high school, I went to Baylor University, and Waco was about 70 miles away. I couldn't wait to get out of Cameron and get away from all these lectures and be off on my own. And I remember when I first gone as a freshman, I was gone for about 6 weeks, and I came home, and my mother said, now, son, I want you to come in here and sit in my bedroom, and I want you to tell me about your new friends. She never saw them. Now I had to describe them to her. And she continued until she passed away, as I became an adult and a businessman. I was literally traveling all over the world.
Yes.
And in her latter years, I still had to talk to her about who my friends were. So that's one of the things that our Christian faith, it makes us feel uncomfortable when we're around people that don't have the faith that we have and are living lives immorally. So I think that was one of the powerful things. But growing up, from the time I made a profession of faith in the Baptist church in Cameron, it wasn't a real big church as we see in bigger cities, but it was an effective church, and they had a good youth program. They usually had a youth minister who was a student at Baylor, who came down on the weekends and other times, and they had a series of several of them that just had a lot of energy. They were happy people, and they made the Christian faith good. And so it was easy to flow into this youth group and do things socially together and grow and mature as teenagers. So that was something that has been so important in Baptist churches in Texas, and I think throughout the country.
Yes.
But I think if we look, that we should constantly be concerned about the programs and the examples and the education we're giving to young people. So that was easy, and that was fun. And then I went to Baylor, and Baylor's environment was much the same as growing up, much bigger environment. Baylor at that time in 1954 was 5,000 students, but that might not sound big today.
Well, that was a lot in 1954.
Yeah, but today, University of Texas or Texas A&M have about 50,000, but had 5,000. But coming from Cameron, that was a big deal to see 5,000 students. So I think if you really work at it, your Christian faith is a continuancy from middle school to high school to college, and then college to becoming an adult. And if you do, as my mother said, be involved with people with high integrity, ethics, and Christian faith. It's just easy to continue that education. I've seen a lot of friends that have had a strong Christian faith. They hit a plateau somewhere and their faith kind of leaves them, or they get discouraged. But mine has just been a continuation. And then I've been married for 48 years, and my wife is a Christian, and we have two sons, and they're both Christians, and we have 5 grandsons, and 3 of them are Christian, 2 of them are not old enough yet. But if people associate with the right ones in the way they conduct their lives, it will shine and it will bring strong Christians into their lives.
While you were at Baylor, what were you thinking you were going to do when you finished school there?
Well, I look back now, and I probably was the most naive, immature. I had fun in high school, made pretty good grades. I had fun, but really didn't take it all too seriously. And I remember when I got to Baylor, they said you have to declare a major. I always loved history. And so I wrote down I was going to be a history major. Well, the first year as a freshman, I took 2 history courses, and neither of the professors were very inspiring. I thought, man, I don't want to look like that for the next 40 years. I want to be something more dynamic. So when the sophomore year started, I moved to business, and I decided my father was a good businessman, and I had watched him, and I'd seen his Christian principles, and so I decided to business, and so that was an abrupt change. But I've got to admit, when I went to Baylor, I was very immature as to what was in the world.
We're going to take a sponsor break, and we'll be right back.
Since 1952, South Texas Children's Home Ministries has focused on healing hearts and sharing hope. Their 9 ministries focus on helping hurting children and families, all regardless of an individual's ability to pay. To find out more, visit www.stchm.org.
So it sounds like your parents were perfectly fine with you studying history, possibly becoming a history teacher or professor or something like that. So they let you make that choice, is what I'm hearing.
I thank them throughout their life. They're both deceased now, but I thank them. My grandfather came from Abbeville, South Carolina in 1888. And in 1894, he went in the wholesale grocery business in Cameron, 1894.
Wow.
My father, when he got out of college in 1921, went to work for his dad.
Okay.
So I worked in our wholesale distribution warehouse in the summertime. I certainly did nothing of management or anything. I was a worker. But never once did my father say, I want you to come in the business. Never once did he ever say that. My mother never said, well, I sure hope you can go in business with your dad. And now I look back, I've just seen so many people were pushed into a family business that they later said, it's not what I wanted to do. I wanted to do something else, but I felt an obligation. Never once did my father or mother say, I hope you come into the family business.
So at the point that you joined the family business, between then and about 30 years after that, would it be too simple to say that the business really took off?
Yeah, I went to college, and then I came back. I went to graduate school at Michigan State in East Lansing, Michigan for 2 years.
Yes.
Came back, and I was in a graduate program with a number of other people, and I had a job. I was barely 22, and I had finished that MBA program, and this was in 1959, and so I was going to take a job with Kraft Foods in San Francisco.
Okay. Yes.
And so I came back from Michigan, And I stopped to visit my parents, and that was the first time my dad had ever said anything to me. He said, "Son, what do you plan to do?" And I said, "Well, Dad, I've got a job, and I'm going to San Francisco." I was single, 22. Man, that would sound exciting. I'd been in school for 6 years. I was ready to go. And I said, "But Dad, I think after 5 or 6 years, I would like to come back and go in business with you." Huh. And he said, "Well, thank you." And he said, "Son, I'll be truthful with you. I have not changed our business or modernized our business." This was in the summer of 1959, as I really should have done. And if you want to wait for 5 or 6 years, I'm not sure it will be good for you to come back in business here. If you want to come in business with me, I think you ought to do it now, or you ought to develop a career somewhere else.
So go one way or the other.
And I thought, wow, I'm 22, I'm single. I had no idea I was living in Cameron, Texas again. And so I went home that night and I prayed about it. It shows how our spiritual value pays off throughout our lives. I had a very, very restless night. And it just kind of shined on me that how many people would give their right arm for an opportunity to start in a family business. So I couldn't wait for 7 o'clock the next morning. I went to my dad and said, "I want to be a businessman with you." And he said, he just thanked me. And I said, "Great." And we talked about it. And I said, now I thought I was going to be a vice president because I've been in school for 6 years. I thought I knew everything. And I said, "Dad, now what's going to be my job?" And he said, "Son, you're going to work on the third shift at night loading trucks." And I said, "Dad, I've been to school for a long time." And he said, "That doesn't qualify you for anything we do here." And he said, "You need to learn this business from the ground up." Well, that really, really, really made me mad. And so I appealed to my mother. You ever go through things like that?
Oh, sure.
I appealed to my mother, and she said, "That's between you and your dad." But anyway, that was the best thing he could have ever done for me, is that I worked for about a year and a half working with blue-collar people that load trucks and select orders and really work hard. And I learned to appreciate them and find out what their thoughts and what motivated them and how you could inspire them. And so my dad moved to the second shift. So I was making progress and moved up. But that was one of the best things, because later it showed me the appreciation of working human beings and how you can inspire them and work with them. So that was my start in a job.
Yes. And it started with talking with your dad and a prayer.
And prayer most of the night. I remember I didn't sleep very good that night because I was pacing up on moving to San Francisco.
Right. My dad was born in San Francisco in 1945 and moved back there in his teenage years. Yeah.
So, well, that sounded exciting, being single.
Oh, yes.
And, getting the heck out of Cameron, Texas.
Well, in a place like San Francisco,
that really reshaped my life and it inspired me to do so. And then I worked well with my dad. I had working experiences like that for about 2.5 years. And then I began to take more and more responsibility in the business. And we ultimately built a brand new distribution center in Temple, Texas, 35 miles away, and really, really changed the business dramatically from then forward.
Yes. So you've made a lot of business decisions in your career. And what Christian principles, what things from your dad, from your church, from your own study of Scripture, this is a big question, what did you bring to those business decisions as a follower of Christ?
Well, we worked hard. I understood, and that's exactly how my dad was. And my grandfather, I didn't know him a great deal, but I certainly observed him what others said. And they always stood for honesty and integrity and high Christian principles. So I made that our mission statement. Companies here 10 years ago got very complicated mission statements. Churches did, and businesses did, and I just said we don't need to. Nobody understands them, and I just said our mission is honesty, integrity, and high Christian principles, and we're going to apply that and provide truly outstanding customer service for our customers, and make our business, the employees and the people that work with us, make their job interesting, where they recognize they're improving their skills and they're on a winning team. So we worked hard to do that. But I think the Christian principles of working with and the worth of every human being, and just being very humble in talking to people.
We're going to take a 60-second sponsor break, and we'll be right back. High Ground Advisors has a 90-year history of providing investment management and planned giving solutions to churches, faith-based organizations, and charitably minded individuals dedicated to transforming lives. High Ground is trusted by over 450 nonprofit clients, and we're one of them. High Ground has partnered with Baptist Standard for over 70 years by offering a comprehensive charitable giving and investment solutions model, which includes asset management, planned giving education and development, account support services, real estate and minerals management, and expert legal consultation. High Ground and the Baptist Standard share similar values, such as serving those who are called and dedicated to transforming lives and being a trusted caretaker of legacies. They also value good stewardship, helping those who desire to be good stewards of their financial resources to find creative giving solutions to fulfill that calling. They know what they do to protect, strengthen, and grow our mission is ultimately in service to the gospel. To learn more about how High Ground Advisors can partner with you or your organization, visit their website at highgroundadvisors.org. What does that look like at McLane? Putting those principles, that mission statement, into action in your company?
Oh, we do that in how we treat our employees, how we treat our customers that we're doing, and then our vendors, who we buy all the food products from, that we treat everyone, we try for the best bargain and get our employees to be as productive as they can, but we try to get them to feel that productivity and giving good service is an important part of what we do, and we want to be better than our competitors. And so having a value system, that's what I talked about. We purchased a lot of companies over the years, and I always talked the first few times I went to an acquisition we talked about what our value system was. The first few times I went, I wouldn't talk a great deal about how we do things. I talked about our value systems, what we stand for. And so we continued, even when we became an employee. We ultimately had a little over 9,000 employees all over the United States. And we would have employee meetings every 2 weeks with all of our employees. And we'd always start it with saying the values of McLane Company are honesty, integrity, and high Christian principles. When you're on the East Coast and the West Coast and some places in between, you had employees of different faith and religious beliefs.
Yes.
And I had one time a fellow who was of the Jewish faith. This was actually in Merced, California. And he came to me after the meeting, and he got pretty noisy. And he said, "I don't appreciate you talking about Christian faith. I'm Jewish, and I don't believe that, and I'm offended by what you say. And I would appreciate it when you're out here not talking about your Christian faith." And I tried to explain to him that I wasn't trying to impose my Christian faith on him. I was using Christian faith to set an example of what we were trying to achieve. So anyway, we kind of got in a heated discussion, and I said, "Well, I'll be back in a month, and I'd like for you to figure out a better way for me to say that." So we kind of parted that way. And I'd kind of forgotten about it. And when we came back, he looked me up and he said, "I took your challenge, and I can't think of a better way to say it, and that's okay for you to keep talking about it. Said I'm still going to be Jewish, but I'm going to give it all I got. So we showed we didn't try to overwhelm people with our Christian faith. We tried to use that as an example and inspire them.
Among your business decisions and your business ventures, what's one that really fulfilled, you think, that mission, those values?
Just the way we set goals, and I'm a firm believer in everything you do. You set goals, and I don't care if you're the CEO of one of our divisions or you're an order selector selecting groceries, that we set goals. I think we're goal-seeking people, and so that's why we like sports. We like sports because there's a goal to achieve to be the best. So we set a lot of goals and try to inspire people and encourage them to do that and to let our light shine as a company and as a place where people of integrity and honesty could be very successful. So we constantly talked in that direction all the time.
Yes.
You're not fulfilling a responsibility, whether you're a butcher, baker, or a candlestick maker. You're not fulfilling your creativity and the imagination and the fullness in life unless you try things. We're too regimented, and in school, I think we get too. There's nothing wrong with making a C.
I'm going to let that sink in. Yeah.
Because I've seen a lot of people that made a lot of C's be awful successful.
Yes.
We're too regimented to people. They got to be here, here, and here, and let them experiment. And I think it's true of your Christian faith. You've got to practice some of the things you were talking about. We've tried to work within particularly the Baptist and the Presbyterian Christian organizations, and we've worked with hospitals and Christian universities, and we've made a few mistakes along the way, but it's fun.
One of the things that I hear from you is that you've given those who work with you and work for you permission to try new things and to make mistakes.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I don't let them just charge off on their own. They've got to present a business plan to us, and we take a group of people and we talk about it. And if the group thinks it has a chance to be successful, but the first test is it morally right and is it legal what we want to do? Then we go through the steps. We don't want to bet the farm on it, and we sure don't want it to blow up in our face.
Right.
But that's part of the joy of being a leader, is to try things, but control it before you really move forward aggressively.
Yeah. Well, you have been a friend to a lot of causes, and just hearing you talk about the influence of your father, your grandfather, your mom on who you are and how you've carried yourself in life, the way that you made friendships or didn't make friendships, and the reasons for that, and then your experience in college and graduate school, on through your time with the McLane Company. I'm grateful for the ways in which our organization has benefited from how God has been good to you and sharing these principles of business. As you've said, these three principles that guide a lot of your business decisions. And I have to say that I am certainly glad that you are on the way with Christ.
Thank you.
Yes.
Well, that's what lifts you every day. And as you go through life, there's a lot of joy, and then there's a lot of heartache at times and difficulties. If you want to be humble, buy a Major League Baseball team.
Oh, tell me about that.
That can humble you. And, I was accustomed to winning, and, going to school, you make good grades and in business, you are successful. And when you bought a Major League Baseball team, I didn't really realize this, that if you win 62% of, you play 181 games every year, 162 games every year. And if you win somewhere around 65% of the games, you'll win your division every time. Well, I've never, that wouldn't get you out of high school, 65.
That's right.
So in baseball, you win, but you lose a lot. So it was hard for me to, when you got into baseball, you would have losing streaks. Even when you were going to win your division, you'd have losing streaks of 3 or 4 games at a time, lose 4 games in a row. And I thought, oh, the world's coming to an end. So baseball taught me a lot too, that adversity and it's so marginally close between winning and losing. Even the best of teams only win about 65% of their games.
Yes. That's fascinating to me too, to have that many games in a season, number one, and then number two, that you can play marginally well and win, or you can play pretty well and lose. Baseball's a fascinating sport.
It's so competitive, and you're playing so many games, and you can have the best team in the world, and you're not going to win more than about 70 or 72% of the games. And just think, man, and it's hard losing. So think of, in high school, you want to win every football game and every basketball game.
Well, sure. And in high school, it's 16 football games?
Yep.
Yeah. So if you can string 16 wins together, that's pretty good.
Yes, it is.
That doesn't happen in Major League Baseball, though.
No, it doesn't. If you want to see something even more severe, is hitting. And, for every 10 times a Major League player comes to bat, he wants to succeed 3. Well, that would be a 30 in college.
That's right.
That'll get you out of college. And if you can succeed 30% of the time as a hitter, we'll pay you $15 or $20 million a year. And so we want you to succeed 3 times out of 10. Nowhere else in life does that happen. And so it shows. And I learned a lot of psychology about baseball I surely didn't know. And what makes it so hard to succeed as a hitter is you fail more than you succeed. You're going to fail 7 times out of 10, or you go to the bottom of the 9th and you're 1 run behind and the bases are loaded and there are 2 outs and you strike out. If you got a hit, you'd have won the game.
That's right.
And how those players got to play day after day, where they'd had a discouraging series at bat on Monday night. Well, Tuesday they got to start all over again.
Yep.
And it's getting their self-image back up again. It's really hard. I'd never been around anything like that before.
It's pretty different from most of our experience.
But I learned that's kind of our Christian faith too, that we have experiences that are difficult in our personal life and in our business, and we get a little discouraged. But your Christian faith got to power you right through all that, and you get back on focus. And I thought, that's kind of like baseball.
Yeah. Well, and it sounds too, there were some echoes in for me anyway, of business, that not every business is a success. And
absolutely.
Yeah. And you've got to be able to take the failure with the success and
learn from it.
And learn, yes.
Not tuck your head and act like it never happened. Say, boy, that was a mistake, or I didn't analyze correctly. But here's what I learned. Or it's very similar to our marriage.
Ah, yes. Well, thank you very much for being with us today. I
appreciate
this time together.
You made it fun. That was easy.
Oh, good.
Well, thank you very much, and thank you for the work that you're doing for the Baptist Standard. I remember when I was a youth, I remember back as in our youth group, we'd look at the Baptist Standard and ask, and said, that's for old people.
Okay.
It was printed then, it was mailed out, I believe, every week.
Yeah, it was every week, and then we went to every other week. Yeah. Yep.
I remember, and I thought that was for old people.
Yeah.
We're young people. We go by a different thing. But then later, as I became an adult and then had a family, you really look forward to it coming, and you knew what was happening in your church, but the Baptist Standard gave you a much broader view of the faith and what was going on in the faith. And that was way before we had all the internet and all this other, and that was a very broadening experience. But it shows life is changing.
Yes. And the way in which we communicate and get our information is different. It was very good to be with you. Just because a person follows Jesus doesn't mean that person is perfect. Following Jesus is a lifetime of growing more like Him. Likewise, while there are followers who are more mature than others, who have spent more time growing close to Jesus than other followers, there are no followers of Jesus who are better than others. If you aren't on the way with Jesus, we invite you to check out the Follow Jesus page on the Baptist Standard website at baptiststandard.com/Follow Jesus to learn more about becoming a follower of Him. If you are on the way with Jesus, we hope that this podcast has encouraged you to grow more like Him. I'm Eric Black, editor of the Baptist Standard, and I'm glad you've been with us today.